All right. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us this Saturday. Hope everyone's having a lovely weekend so far. We're joined by Liv Little, the author of Rosewater. Thank you so much for joining us, Liv.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited.
Yeah, so I'm gonna give an intro. Just pulled this from your little author bio.
Thank you.
Liv Little is a writer of Jamaican and Guyanese descent via South London. She tells stories with heart about the people and places that matter to her. Her work spans journalism, audio, TV, and curatorial projects for which she's received various accolades, including LGBTQI plus Broadcaster of the Year and Rising Star at WOW. Her short stories, The Sisters, was published in the critically acclaimed Hag, a collection of forgotten folk tales retold. She was a BBC writer in residence for 2021, during which she developed an original pilot for a queer conspiracy thriller. Need to talk more about that. And Liv is most at peace in nature, and she now lives by the sea. Rosewater is her debut novel. Thank you for joining us
Thank
again.
you. Thanks.
So congratulations on your debut. What has the publishing process been like for you, and what was working with John Legend like?
Mr. Legend. Yeah, my mate. No. Um, no, it's been amazing to be fair. It's been incredible. And I think I was like curious to see how yeah, like what the response would be like in the UK and then in the US and what that would like look and feel like. And it's been overwhelmingly positive. I think it's been interesting to get a sense of like which characters people connect with the most, and a lot of people especially love Maggie, which has been really fun. And I just wrote like a little spin-off story for like We Present, their like literally series, which was fun, and I'm working on like a longer form project kind of like situated in the time that she would have grown up, so that's super exciting. But it's just been great. It's been like full of love, like lots of like emotions, feelings, like sexiness, sadness, like all of the things, which has been kind of amazing. And I mean, yeah, I poured like so much love and intention and just care into the book, so I think it feels really amazing to have that received, by especially like by the quiz. Like it's great.
Yeah, happy Pride.
Yeah.
So how much of the book is related to your own lived experience, your own
Yeah.
relationships with art and friendships and sense of
Mm.
place?
Yeah, I mean, definitely I'm not Elsie. People have asked, I'm like, she's a heartbreaker. She would have broken my heart. I like always fall in love with girls who are poets. I just have a thing for them. I don't know. So no, but I think that there are definitely, I think like the feeling, the impetus, the like anxiety, the stress, the panic, the inability to take help when you need help, the like teetering on those feelings of like, oh, this is a friend, like, but do I feel slightly different about this friend, and like what is that, what is going on, or is it just a deep friendship love, which I think can be as great as the as kind of romantic love, as important. And so I'd say there's like lots of influences within my life. Like it's set in South London, she's obviously Guyanese. I think one thing that's like a huge part of my work more broadly is like intergenerational relationships and dynamics, and how like different types of love can show up for us. So having something that spanned like queerness across 3 generations of Black, Caribbean, British kind of women was super important. um and yeah, but I'm definitely not her, but I think all of us put parts of ourselves in the stories that we tell, and I think a lot of the women that have informed, shaped, are really important in my life. Like, there's like parts of them in the book too, like details. Juliet drives this old bashed up mini, and like my one of my best friends from like secondary school, she used to drive this old like green car with like a smashed in window and like a plastic bag on it, and like she loved it because her auntie Sue, who died when we were at uni, had given it to her, and it was like she was not gonna she only just, and we graduated a while ago, she only just let go of this car because it meant so much to her. And so I think, and the grandma and like her big cussing her granddaughter out lovingly, being like, I might die tomorrow, like, where have you been? It's giving my grandma. And my grandma also like helped me with a lot of the dialect for the grandma. She like went through and helped me make sure that everything was authentic. So there are definitely like, South London is a place where I like grew up, where I first kissed a girl, like where I did loads of things for the first time that I shouldn't have been doing, and where I really found who I was, and where like home and community like is really, really strong for me. And so I think definitely lots of influences and themes. And I think the feelings of grief and finding your place and home and falling in love, I think those are, you know, those are all feelings and things that I have been through. And I think I hope a lot of people can relate to, you know.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. Has your grandmother read the book in full?
She's not, I don't think she has in full, but it's like always because her eyes are not amazing. She's 88,
Mhm.
but amazing. But she's got it like next to her reclining kind of chair. But when she did read like the start of it, she did say like, "Oh, I didn't know you had it in you, girl." Like it's basically because it's a bit steamy, and I was like, "Oh," I was like, "Nan," and my nan's not queer or anything, but I just was like, this is kind of great. So yeah, and like my little sister was like one of the first people to read it. She's like 17 and is also queer, and she's like, she was 15 at the time, and she was like the first person I let read it and give me feedback because she's like an avid reader. She's so smart. And then I think my mum is still like finding time to read it. So yeah, but everyone's like obviously super excited. It's like, yeah, well, it will take them
Yeah.
time, but I'm also like, no rush, guys, like sit with it, live with it. I'm also don't put my friends under pressure being like, if you haven't read it yet. I'm just like, take your time with it, and when you have a moment to enjoy it, enjoy it.
Yeah. Yeah, because that's when, you know, you're able to absorb it best, is when
Yeah,
you find
yeah,
the time within yourself to, you know, take
exactly,
that as you can and not any other pressures.
exactly.
Yeah. So for those of you on the call that don't know, Liv was the founder of a now closed independent British online and print magazine called Galdem, which is how I found out about you first.
Oh,
When I was in college. Galdem was like one of
oh
the
wow,
things that I read as a gender and sexuality studies
oh
major.
wow.
Yeah. So it was fully produced by women and non-binary people of color, committed to telling the stories of people in color and marginalized groups, addressing inequality and misrepresentation in the industry through platforming the creative and editorial work of their community. So how did your experience in Galdem inform Elsie's character as well as your fiction writing process? And how was that transition from short form to long form for you?
Yeah, yeah. That's a really good question. Not one I've been asked, to be fair.
Mhm.
It's really interesting because I spent a lot of my time in my career kind of encouraging people to tell their stories and use their voice. And I think like, you know, there were some projects that I was able to do that really spoke to my kind of like love of queer history. We did a project a few years ago, like connecting younger queer artists with older queer artists and really mapping the history that kind of explains why they're able to show up in the ways that they are today, which also then went on to inform like Maggie and like some deeper, bigger research that I'm doing. It was like quite a short form, you know, 4-part series project. So I think that, you know, I would always be, I love film. I've always loved film, and I worked in TV as well. And so I think look, there were lots of different experiences that were kind of like coming into play. But I think like I had also gotten to a point where I was like, shit, like what's my voice? Like what does Liv want to say? Like how does Liv want to move through the world? Who is Liv outside of this? And like what does that look like and what does that feel like? And so, you know, I was going through a big period of transition, like stepping away from that like 3 years ago. Also, like my dad was ill, like navigating that and leaving like the city that on this and South London, this place that had meant so much to me. So I was on like a real deep journey of like who am I and like what is my voice and what do I want to say. And it's through writing a character like Elsie who's really certain of her voice, really sure of her voice, really knows who she is like fiercely. It's like, how does the rest of the world receive her? She's stubborn, she knows what she wants, she knows what she will and won't accept. It's like through writing a character that was that clear, it really helped me to regain confidence in my own voice. So that was a really beautiful and magical thing. And you know, like one thing that I do within the book is like there's reference to like, you know, people that I will have met through that space, actually. Artists, there's a mention of an artist called Shola who's amazing, whose work I've got like downstairs in my living room, and I'm about to do the exhibition text for her exhibition. She's amazing, and like I met her quite early on in her career. And then, you know, Prim Black, which is a friend of mine, runs this queer Black book club over here, and like Elsie goes to one of the erotic reading nights, and it's like I've been to that erotic reading night, and like that's a space that means a lot to me. And so, you know, like you'll feel you know, she listens to Ravina was like Ravina had her first cover with Galdep. So like there
I
are
love
different,
that.
yeah, like she's
Yeah.
amazing. So there are, and Joyce, she's got a Joyce Rice album, and Joyce was like was our first ever print cover. So there are definitely like people that I've met or like influences and things that have inspired me and like made their way into the book actually. And that's a really nice question. So
Yeah, glad. And speaking of like, influences that make their way into the
yeah.
book, the poetry that Elsie
Yeah.
writes and is in there is so, so gorgeous. And
Yeah.
I know you worked on this with a friend of yours.
Hi.
So
Yeah.
can you give us some insight into that process and how these poems came about? Like what came first, chicken or egg?
Yeah. So basically, so I obviously I knew, I mean, writers love to write about people that love words, right? It's just like a very, I'm like so predictable thing that we kind of do. So anyway, I had written Elsie as a poet, and that being a space where often she's able like she often lacks the language and the tools to like express what she wants to express in conversations. There were a lot of moments where you're like, oh my god, you really wanted to say the thing but you just couldn't say the thing, and you were so scared of losing this, and all of these things, right? But in her poetry is a space where a lot is revealed to the audience about where she's at, but she also reveals a lot to herself that she might have been suppressing. So anyway, there were 3 really pivotal moments in the book where I knew that there were poems that were really going to punctuate and tell us something about where Elsie was in that moment, also reveal this kind of like love story, also, you know, reflections on home as something that she's navigating and that is plaguing her with anxiety and panic attacks. But like that would be the space where she'd really articulate what home means to her. So anyway, I had written the book and I'd left spaces for these poems, and I had like an overview of what I wanted them to be about and like certain details that I wanted included, and a general like sense of the vibe and the tone. And when I'd finished writing this book, like 75,000 words, I was like, I know who the perfect person to bring these poems to life is. And it was like, Elsie has this like real ability to emote, to make you feel deeply, also this like sexiness and thing that like draws people in. And you know, sex is a space where she often finds power, and she really knows how to control situations. And you know, that's also a thing of her needing to be in control, which obviously shifts throughout the book and the different kinds of intimacy that she has. But I was like, it's Kai and it's Kai only. And like, you know, I've loved Kai's work for a long time, and they're also like a really good friend of mine. And so I sent the book and just said, you know, like, what do you think of the book? And they really loved it. And I was like, okay, well, what do you think about writing poetry as this character? And it's not something that they'd ever done before, but it's something we had a lot of fun doing, a bit over voice notes. And okay, yeah, but actually, Juliet listens to like Tracy Chapman here, so that should be, or whatever, you know, just thinking about certain placement of stuff. But there was one poem that needed no kind of like edits, and that was the one about pepper pot, which literally I read and I sobbed, because I was like, your ability to capture what this dish means on a cultural, historical, all of the levels, and just the feeling of family, bringing people together, making something delicious out of these scraps of meat, and how as Black people that's so a thing through history that has happened. And you know, then they performed it at my launch, and my mum and like Guy and his fam and stuff are there, and they were all like sobbing because they were like, wow, like how did they know? Like it's just wow, it really is what that is. And so yeah, it was just really, it was magic. It was a dream kind of collab, and it was really deliberate and really intentional. And it was like there was no other poet's voice. It was only this poet's voice. Like it was not like I had a long list and was like, I'll go through and who said no. I was like, it's Kai, and I'm only asking Kai. And so hopefully Kai agrees. But yeah,
I
so
love that. That's such an intentional
yeah,
choice. I love that, you had them in your mind.
yeah.
And that was so Elsie to you. It
Oh,
it
yeah.
really comes across. And Athena in the chat said the pepper pot poem, yes, it made me want some so badly.
Ah,
Same. I've
okay.
never had pepper pot, and
I'm
I
like,
live
if
in
there's
New York. So
Guyanese
if
crew
no
in the
place in
chat,
New York where I can get some that you recommend, please let me know.
I don't. The thing is, there's not even here. There aren't really like Guyanese restaurants, but I mean, maybe you've got some roti shops in New York. I don't know, but if anyone does know in the chat, please let me know, because when I come, I'll be rolling through.
Amazing. So you talked about your grandmother earlier, and there's this scene, which I think is my favorite in the book, where Elsie finds her grandmother's mementos from her relationship with a
Yeah.
woman, and her grandma's like, and she's just like, yeah, this is just a fact of my life, and now you know, and you
And
know that
okay.
you know, and that's that. What's that significance for
Yeah.
Elsie?
Yeah, that was a really fun and important scene to write, actually. And I think I wanted to map, like, for like the kind of queer space that Maggie occupied was very specific to 90s and AIDS and like all of these things that were going on and organizing and music and that thing, right? And Elsie being able to show up as she is today, and her queerness is not ever under question, nor is her blackness. Like, those are things she's really sure of. It's like I really wanted to make a point of really saying that without Elsie's Nan and without Maggie, like, Elsie doesn't exist. Without these generations of queer Black women, we don't exist, or I don't exist. And so I have my own, Maggies in my life, and etc. So that was really important. But yeah, I wanted, it was I suppose that there were many things that is going on in that scene. It's like everyone being able to see what Elsie can see before she can see it, in terms of in her own life. And I think Elsie actually being able to understand that for her Nan, it was like, yeah, you didn't tell people, it just was, because to exist in that time was hard enough. And actually those that needed to know did know, right? Those that needed to know did know. And it was I've watched like multiple documentaries where often it is described in that way. It's like the friend that is always there, that like you don't talk about it, but they were always there, and maybe the grandkids didn't understand what that meant or looked like, but I'm sure her mum would have done, for example. But I wanted it to not be a big deal for her Nan. Like, they have this really beautiful and important relationship, and they really see each other, or her Nan definitely really sees her, and accepts her fully and just loves and adores her. And I wanted there to just be this base level of understanding and acceptance. There didn't need to be this horrific moment of, that's not okay, or that's not natural, or like, but why? It's like, no, Hanan's like, I can see that you and this person, I've watched you grow up, and I know. And
Yeah.
also, do you want me to be annoyed? Because I think for me, like, it's like when I told my mum, for example, at 16, and I was like so stressed to tell her. And all my friends are like, just tell Michelle, Michelle's cool, Michelle's not gonna mind. And then I remember we called her in we had this back alley that we go and smoke in after school. And I called my mum, and I was like, and she was so unbothered. She was like, but I guess, you're at that age where you want to, experiment, figure things out. And I was kind of like, oh, that's it. But actually, how fortunate I am, and how lucky I am that was it, And I think Elsie has so many other things and conflicts and challenges going on in her life, that person that is a safe space for her doesn't need to find fault with something at her big age. Like, what is the benefit of her not, like, letting that impact the love that she has for this granddaughter that she, is her favorite, and that she absolutely adores, and that they have this bond where they're like this, and they can really talk to each other. So it was all of those things, I suppose.
Oh my God, I love that answer, because I'm to my knowledge, the only queer person in my like blood family.
Mm-mm.
And I found out last year, finding photos, that I had a great aunt sis, and she lived with her best friend in Vermont, and they owned a gem store, like a gemstone rock store in Vermont. And they drove a pickup truck, and I saw a photo of her with like a fully buttoned up flannel, like a short, like mullet style, like shag, and like Timberlands, and
That's
like
amazing.
Dickies. And I was like, that's a lesbian right there. Oh my God. And I was like, oh my God, there's one of me in the family. And like, no one talked about it. Everyone was just like, yeah, Aunt Sis has her friend. I forget what her friend's name was. I think it was her friend Bucky. I think her name was something. Wow. And I was like, oh my God, there's lesbians in my family. And I had no fucking idea until I was out, and like so scared to be.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's my little anecdote.
And it's even interesting when Hanan says, your generation feel the need to like label everything, and sometimes it is, and like, don't make it more of a. I enjoy what those conversations between generations look like, the things or the anxiety that Elsie's bringing to that situation. Hanan's like, I don't have time to I've lived, I've seen some stuff. Yeah, do you know what I mean? So I just,
Yeah.
and that's amazing that you literally have just had that experience, you know?
No,
That's
truly. So you kind of touched on this a little bit already, but besides, her grandmother Maggie's my favorite character
yeah,
in the book. And there is a lot of these kind of touchstones of London in the 70s, 80s,
yeah,
90s. Especially like there's an emphasis on the temporality of these spaces. So
yeah.
what was important for you to convey in that research and that writing?
Yeah, I mean, I think so. When I did this project like a few years ago, like one of the things that was glaringly obvious was the fact that like things are not archived. They're just not archived. It's not
Yeah.
like it's not a central place, or like I know that there's like a museum now called Queer Britain that has like a roaming exhibition, but I don't know if it's like historical really. But basically, there is not a place where you can go and be like, okay, I can easily look through and find all this stuff. You have, I mean, you can go to libraries, you can look through archive material, but it's not like necessarily, unless you know it's there, you're not going to find it. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? So when we did this project, like we took one of the artists, amazing artists, they're called Joy Miesi, to do an episode. It was on art, like as in artists in the kind of traditional sense of the word. And anyway, we're in London, and in Glasgow in Scotland there's this thing called the Women's Library, and in it they have this archive, and it's like that was where the flyers and the posters and the information source material on Black women organizing in the 80s and 90s was in Glasgow. So it's like again, it's like and we were working with like a researcher and a producer, so like you have people who know where and how to find things, but it's not necessarily easily laid out, right? And they actually said that I can't remember which decade this was in, or but there was an order to destroy after I think the Black Women's Centre closed, or there was an order to like destroy a lot of this source material, literally to get rid of it. And it went there as like a safe place to house it. And it was like, that's how like
Yeah.
history is literally created. Like it is literally like it's very much dependent on basically the white, and patriarchal system that we live under, that's race
Yeah.
and all of those things. It's like, no, okay, we don't, that can stay over there in a box, or just get rid of it, it's not important. And it's like, whoa, it's so important. So I think having done that project like 3 or 4 years ago, I've been like really interested in like actually not even just like for work's sake, but just building more relationships intergenerationally with older like queer women, like getting to know people, getting to build actual like friendships, and like finding commonalities, and seeing what that looks and feels like. And I think, and then also simultaneously like wanting to do research into building out those worlds. So like I'm very early stages of developing like a feature idea which is situated in that space with my own, with like based on the life of someone who was really important and integral, who I've been doing a lot of research and like interviews with. Because I'm and so for me, like one of the things that was amazing about this book was it was saying, in terms of the spaces opening and closing, it was like Maggie and Elsie have this dynamic where Maggie sends like these old flyers that they find, because that was the thing that brought me, I think, to discover those spaces and those amazing women who have been like at the forefront of arts and politics and all of that stuff. And I was like, how can, Elsie's really curious, like she's a storyteller, she wants to know more about Maggie and her life, and it's interesting, and it's still interesting, she's a darts player, and she's, all of these things are going on for her. So I think, that then became, and that was really, my editor in the UK, because she's worked with the Black Culture Archive for a long time, and she knows a lot about history and culture, and she's from South London, she's also Jamaican, all the things. So she was like, well, let's make more. So I was like, okay, let's have this thing where they kind of share flyers, and obviously at the end, Boom becomes another one that they add to this list of spaces that kind of closes down. And there's this circularity of things opening and closing, and there being space for more things to grow, but also obviously the conditions that force things to close is not ideal, and those are important spaces. But there were so many, and anyway, this is going to be part of the bigger project, but there were so many really important places and spaces. And so I was like, I want to maybe I wanted to like honor, respect, acknowledge, like within Elsie's story, these women that had come before, and also hoping and seeing, actually, it's been really great, like evidence for my feature being like, everyone loves Maggie and everyone wants to know more about what the 90s looked and felt like, because it was amazing. And like full of energy. I mean, it was a really toxic and complicated political environment, and so much was happening. But even with shows, I don't know if you've seen like It's a Sin. It's like there are these amazing kind of, it's about like that period in the kind of like 80s in Britain, but it ignores the contribution that like Black women made to like the AIDS movement and lesbians and all of that sort of stuff, right? Like there are things that are not kind of, again, like literally just like,
that's why the L is first.
yeah, like literally just gone. So it's like I want to start too, and I show you, you know, you get a taste. This is Elsie's story, but Maggie's story is a part of that. This is the beginning of me saying, okay, I'm building, and then you've got the short story, and then hopefully like the feature, which is early days. I'm just researching, but it's like, yeah, those are the things that are important to me, and I write stories from a place of the people, places, worlds, and things that I care about, and it all, and also like always has to have a level of joyousness and energy to balance out that which is challenging. And I want my characters to feel dynamic and full of life, and all very distinct and very different. And I think within this book I was like, look at all these different queer Black women, very different experiences, very different relationships with their queerness, with themselves, their families, with class, because you know, Black women, queer Black women, not a monolith. Even, you know, these 5 characters cannot possibly represent the full breadth of everyone's experience, you know. That's just, that's not the point of the book. This is Elsie's story, whether you like or her perspective on thing or you don't, or whatever. It's that's her character, that's her as a person. And it's like, I think the more stories we have, the better, you know, because we can't expect this one thing to, or the, you know, to fulfill every desire that we have for a queer character either. And I think that expectation is something that often happens when there historically haven't been like loads of books and loads of stories and loads of shows commissioned that have, you know, characters that are outside of the dominant. Anyway, I'm rambling now, but yeah.
No, we love rambles. I love rants. I love rambles. Encourage them in Sapph-Lit.
Like that was like 5 minutes of just chatting.
No, what you're saying about like the kind of intergenerational, like your Black women not being a monolith, it's kind of reminding me of, and she's quoted on like in the blurb, Bernadine Evaristo's Girl, Woman, Other,
and Nicole Dennis Benn, like with him, who's the son, and Patsy, like queer Jamaican stories that looks at different relationships amongst different generations of women. But yeah, Bernadine obviously does that a lot with and Mr. Loverman, actually, you know, so I just think, yeah, it's so important. And even those relationships, like having a relationship with her, she's supported me so much in my work, and that's very much a part of who she is. And again, that is an important thing, you know.
So, absolutely.
Yeah, I feel really just excited to like tell all these stories in different.
I'm excited to consume. So where can we find the short story?
So let me see if I can actually just like drop it in the chat. But it's
amazing. I'll share it out with our community as well.
I'll find it. Oh, here we go, got it. And then I also narrate it, lol, which is not something that I've done before, but you can have a listen. Yeah, that's it there.
Amazing. Thank you for sending that. Okay, back to, there we go. So Elsie's story really illustrates the immense privilege that comes with being a full-time artist. Kind of going back to who narrates what stories, who narrates culture. She feels like she'll never make it, quote unquote, make it, even though she's only 28, which kind of shows how our society views up-and-coming young artist timelines to be. How do you think Elsie and her art would be different if she didn't have to worry about her financial status?
Babe, she would fly. She would fly. That's, you know, it's like, as in her situation is definitely way more intense than mine. Like I've had this like a family, and I know that if anything was to go wrong, I want to live back at home with my mum. I love her so much, but you know, but whatever. It's the fact that she literally, you know, her options really are limited. But the things that I can relate to is trying to build like a creative business and make money from art, and how hard that can be, and the toll that juggling that can take on your mental health and well-being. It's like, intense, like it's hardcore. But you know, for her, like I said earlier, like the voice is there, the talent is overflowing, it's clear. But it's like, yeah, if she doesn't have the space to not work or to be able to go at it full time. I feel really so excited that in the past 2 years I've been able to, like, writing is what I am doing full time. But before juggling a full-time job, and then you have another, like at first with Galdem, I had a full-time job, I had the magazine, and then eventually spent time whilst working trying to raise a bit of money to make the magazine. Like it's like, you know, it's always, and the stress of that is intense. But yeah, if she was able to just have the financial, like, freedom, support, or to get paid effectively for the work that she was doing so that she could supplement that, or if she had, you know, whatever, then, but then there's also this thing, is like, we don't need to suffer to make good art. But I also know that I've lost two parents, I've experienced, like, that, to me those are the two, like, it's the deepest form of heartbreak, that loss of caring for a parent, of seeing them die, of not being on that journey of them facing their immortality. And I know that even with this book, it was kind of happening in tandem with that. But I know that for my future works and my character development, all these things, my ability to feel so deeply, even if that depth has been pain, contributes to me being able to emote and to connect with readers or people watching the things that I'm writing, because it's coming from a place of, I have experienced something. I think you need to live in the world to be able to write, which is also why her poetry is so
good,
incredibly moving, and, like, you know, makes you feel, and is coming from a place of, it's not theoretical, it's very different when it is theoretical, you know, or it's hypothetical, it's like imagined. And like I say, her world is not my own world, but in terms of the feeling that you're able to draw out, I think you got to live a bit, right? And so she's living, and hopefully the next chapter for her is being paid. You know.
I mean, she gets it with the book deal,
but it's also like, if you break that down, it's like, that's
I mean,
not,
you know how publishing pays. There's like a big advance, and then it's like you have to make all of that up. And
and hers isn't, right? Like, it isn't realistically. And once you break that down into increments, but she's in a better place, and she does have a job with a boss who's but it's okay, and she's figuring it out, and she has her own room somewhere now, and, you know, so she's in a better place than when we meet her. But and it does have a relatively, like, happy ending, but we also know that what comes next is going to be complicated and messy. And I think that they're still figuring out how to do this thing together. It's not going to be a straightforward, oh, it was so hard for so long and now we just figured it out. Honey, like, it's going to be hard, you know?
So let's talk about the ending, because they are messy, girl. Like, Juliet, Elsie, they have so much left to talk about that they haven't addressed, and we don't get to see that. It's kind of like black screen off camera, like end of the Sopranos vibes. So, like, okay, so my question's kind of in two parts. Like, did you plan the ending from the beginning, or did it, like, come to you in the process of writing? And then two, like, where, I mean, we got to say goodbye to these characters that we fell in love with so deeply, and you had to say goodbye to them too. So, like, where do you imagine them now? Where are they living? What's their vibe?
Really, really good. Yeah, I live with them. I feel like I know Aggie, I know Elsie, I know all of them. I'm like, they're with me always, and I talk about them very much like they are real people. Yeah, I think I wrote the book chronologically, and the only thing I wasn't sure of at the end initially was, like, do they have that moment where they're seeing each other, or do they not? And I was like, I'm going through enough. I'm like, we're going through enough. Let's have a hint at, like, a hint at something being there. But of course it's like, and in this moment of trauma and all of those sorts of things. But I mean, Elsie's feelings have been, like, surfacing continuously before this moment happens, but it's like, fuck, there's no time. Let's just, and death is very confronting, and I was confronting my dad's very close and potential death. So when she's listening to, like, Yeba, I was literally listening to that whilst, like, losing my dad and crying and writing this scene thinking about that, like, you know, so it was intertwined in those kind of ways. But yeah, I think I say I wasn't sure, but quite quickly I knew that I wanted it to hint at. But actually, one of the things that we was experimented with, I was like, it was suggested to try, was to write like a epilogue with like a flash forward to them having it all, and it just felt like it was like, no, because it wouldn't be like that, and it wouldn't be all dreamy and neat and kind of, yeah, tied up. But they've done a lot of talking at this point, and now they need to do a lot of like practicing the things that they've spoken about. And so for me, like, one of the things that I'm really excited about, you know, it is in development, it has been optioned, like if it was to get made into a show, like maybe series 2, you kind of get, I mean, it would be great, but let's see, it's hard to get stuff made. But series 2, maybe you do explore that more. But also the other thing that's amazing about the medium of TV is it would no longer be just Elsie's point of view. So you'd get more of Maggie, you'd get more of B, you'd get more of Elsie and Andrew, you'd get more of you know, like all of these and the grandma, sorry, you get more of these kind of supporting characters. But I mean, I think that it's gonna take a lot of time for Juliet to heal, to recover, to like process.
Yeah, literally.
Yeah, literally, that have happened, the trauma of what it is that she's experienced. Maybe she'll take some time off work, she'll figure out. Maddie, I need it as a series 2. Girl,
Same.
I need it too. You know, she'll be figuring things out. Maggie will be like on to the next darts championship. So the short story that I've written is her like reuniting with like a past flame from her youth. And like there's a moment when Maggie, and it's like slightly changed, but you know, similar. Maggie is going to meet this girl that Elsie's like, oh, you know, this 20-year-old booty call. But it's like in the story that I've written, they're reuniting after a long time apart. And so, you know, it might be a bit of an evolution of what does that relationship look like, having known each other in that period. And maybe we'll even get maybe we'll even see a bit of the grandma's backstory, you know, maybe there'll also be that. But I think, you know, Elsie's mum is definitely, Elsie's grandma, sorry, is definitely living in maybe a smaller place. Elsie hopefully is making more of an effort to go and see her. I think again, like this thing of like imperfect but like relationship growth is, Elsie definitely has that with her mom, where she's able to understand where her mom's coming from more now. She still has a lot of pain. I don't think they're ever going to be best friends, but there's a bit of a relationship that is forming, or a bit of an understanding. So it'd be interesting from that series to be figuring out what does that look like, her and her mum in adult life, in a way that is, I think, would be quite boundaried still, but is there some exploration that can happen there, or between the mum and the grandma and her? That's something that like I think about a lot. We'll get, you know, maybe we'll get spend a bit more time with like Juliet and Andrew. I think, you know, also like as toxic as Andrew's behavior is and has been in the book, there are also a lot of moments where like both Elsie and he meet each other with a lot of ego.
Oh, 100%, without a doubt.
And a bit of both of them weird vibes, because she's not this thing or something to possess, and they all both need to interrogate their jealousy, I think, because neither of them necessarily show up in a way that is healthy for Juliet. And therefore also getting a bit more into Juliet's world and her life and her jobs, and like, and her relationship with her mum is also fucking complicated. And it's like they both think, well, you've got it better, and your mum, at least your mum didn't bother you. No, but my mum was so involved. And you know, they have that thing at the dinner table where we find out about the mum and Elsie's dad. I know I probably, like, my partner was like, you and men, and I was like, this is Elsie's perspective on men, but also it's interesting that, so you know, maybe there'll be a bit more development of Andrew and the dad. There's so much, honestly, like that I think with the series that you can play with. This is very much Elsie's point of view. She's very stubborn. She knows what she likes and what she doesn't like. She's not that forgiving to whiteness or men and all of these things. She's kind of unbothered, and just doesn't feel like she needs to make time or space for. But yeah, like a series would allow you to get deeper into that. So I you know, there's so much, I think, you know, even Juliet's the stuff that Juliet's going through with her work, and Elsie, obviously it's from Elsie's point of view, and she's not able to support Juliet in the ways that she needs to, and she's a bit in her own stuff. So delving into that, I think, as well, would be super super interesting. And maybe, you know, she meets her friend in the wine, but you get a sense of this community. And I think I would love to have like some of those moments where you're in those spaces, like you see the people that are actually run those spaces and are in those spaces and are really important to like Black queer Black British culture. There's lots of spaces that shape my experiences that like no longer exist, but the people are like, you know, it's iconic, like the spaces that they held here. So I'd love to also, basically I want to do loads, wildly ambitious, but I'm hoping, you know, when the hopefully the demands of the like writers are
The WGA, yeah.
then it will be something that will be picked up, but for now it's paused.
Fingers crossed they reach a deal soon, because I miss all of my talk shows. Anywho, one of the characters you mentioned as like a perspective that we can explore is Andrew, and I hate Andrew. I mean, I feel like most of the readers do. He's very easy to hate, and Elsie has kind of like skin crawling feeling with him, like from the get, before we even find out what he did to Juliet with exposing her sex work and camming to the school that she works at. But when I was reading that scene and found out that this is what happened, like my mind was like, oh, well, it's obviously Andrew. But then another part of me was like, oh, a viable alternative to who could have sent this in is Elsie's mom.
Elsie's, oh, interesting, because I've also had, so I had a really good conversation with someone who was like, well, what if it was Andrew's ex-girlfriend? And I was like, oh
no, but I really do think with Elsie's mom, like with what Juliet's mom shared at the dinner table and her thinking Juliet's a bad influence, maybe she doesn't think she should be around children, it's like an attempt to like have some control over Elsie's life. I don't know, I thought
on her own daughter, that's dark.
Very dark. No, I'm like, mommy issues.
No. I mean, even with a there's like, you can explore. I mean, initially it was like the first version I wrote, it was I think the teacher in the school who had like found it through watching her, and it ended up being that it was Andrew. But yeah, that's one thing that I've been like, oh yeah, interesting to think about, like alternative ways or that could have been. And the reason why I found the Sophie thing interesting is because the bulk of the book, and also, you know, you saying about the mum, is because obviously the bulk of the book is about how women interact with each other, the good, the bad, and the ugly. So I'm like
like
something to think about for sure. Yeah.
Okay, so
it's fun to have these conversations.
Like, I know, I love it. So that's why I do this. So the cover is so striking, but I have to know, is it you on the cover?
It's not. It's actually, it's not. My friend was like, I can't believe people think that's you. Your head is way bigger, and I'm like, thanks, babes. But no, I think the girl whose head it is a New Yorker. She DM'd me and said, that's my head, and where is the billboard, because I need to go see it. So that was cool. But no, they don't shoot like typically you don't really shoot, I guess, unless
it's like
memoir.
Like stock.
And so the US team did an amazing job of finding that image, and then we like edited in some like hoops and love. Details.
And then last, like, kind of long form question before we move on to our rapid fire round. So like short I know, pressure. But anyone who is listening, if you have any questions for Liv, we definitely have time at the end and can ask. So my last question is there a reaction from a reader that stood out to you?
Oh, good question. Reaction from a reader. I mean, there's been so many good ones. I think let me think. Oh, it's hard to choose, because I mean, like I said earlier, it's definitely been amazing to hear people connecting with the different characters, especially loving Maggie and like the grandma. That's felt extra special, that desire for that like intergenerational kind of storytelling, because so often the stories that we center as young people and coming of age and young people and actually like lives are rich and full actually, and maybe somewhat more interesting, and the stakes are higher when you're exploring that with characters over the age of like 40. So that's that, and that's just really like proof for me to go out with some of my pictures on being like, the people, this is what the girlies want, they actually want more of this. But I think just generally like knowing that people have been moved has been amazing, like to me, that people have felt like that are like I just put it down. I just need time to like digest and process, because or I'm crying, or I just feel so happy, or it was so sexy, and I've not read like, you know, like scenes written like that between two queer women or two queer black women, like that stuff. I'm like, wow, you know. And I think really just that people are reading it is really great. Like people, you know, the options are like infinite, and I think it's a very like, I mean, the themes are universal, but it's like also very much centering like very specific characters and voices in like a place. And I think beautiful proof that there is in within the specificity there is universality, and people can connect with characters and stories that don't outside of their own or the norm of what it is that we tend to see. It feels really special, and it feels special that a lot of those comments I know are coming from like queer women and non-binary people. Like that feels really great, that like I wrote this book for myself, so I won't say the people that I wrote this book for, but the people who I want to enjoy this book specific, like in particular, responding,
resonate with it and feel seen by it.
Yeah. And that's really, really, I wrote it because I needed to write it, but it feels great that people are like, I also really needed this book. And so
I love that. Okay, rapid fire.
Okay.
What are you currently reading?
I'm reading Concerning My Daughter. It's like a short, like, is it like a novella? I've literally just started. And then simultaneously I'm reading Bellies by Nicola Dinan, I think, which is coming out in July, I think.
Okay, love. What is a book that you recommend everyone to read?
Oh, Here Comes the Sun by Nicole Dennis Benn. That's like always, always, always.
Okay, love. Did you take up an unusual quarantine activity? For me, it was knitting. Like I knit an entire cardigan. I had never knit a piece of clothing.
Knits everything, crochets everything. I was so fucking stressed in lockdown, and I was caring for so I was just like I was like hospital. What did I do? I mean, I did start swimming actually outside in the freezing cold sea.
Oh my God.
That was good.
I don't think I'll ever, I mean, I've been to England once and we'll talk about that.
Yeah.
But I don't think I'll ever get into a body of water in England in my life. It feels so freezing.
If you come in the summer, I'll take you somewhere nice. There's like some nice like little like pondy things that people go to, but I know it's cold. It's cold.
If you could have dinner with anyone dead or alive, who would it be?
Stop. That is such a hard question.
It can be a dinner party. You can have like a few people if you can't narrow it.
This is my favorite. You said this is quick fire. This is like my brain work like that. This
first person that comes to mind, like instinct.
Oh, fuck. You know, I'd actually really love to have like dinner with Jill Scott. She's obviously alive. I'm like, I'm going to see her in the UK, and like, I think she'd be a vibe. I think she'd be fun. I think she'd be sexy. I think she'd like be super smart and like just have that thing where you like want to stay up and like talk all night, do some shots of tequila. So I'll say her.
That would be a fun party. What's the favorite class you took at university?
Oh, I'd say an MA class actually. I started an MA in Black British writing. And we did like a historical kind of I can't remember what the unit was called, but we looked at books like The Emperor's Babe by Bernardine Evaristo, and like loads of texts that have like just shaped, you know, Black British culture and the literary canon, and Trumpet by Jackie Kay, which is an amazing, beautiful, delicious book. So I'd say starting that MA was like amazing, and I recommend everyone do it before it gets cut, because it's seen as being not super important. So yeah,
you need to write down the syllabus.
Yeah.
And then so the company that I work for is based in London. I work remotely in the States. So I went to London for the first time 2 months ago. Loved it. I'm going back next month. So what are your London spots for food, books, thrifting? What do you do?
Let me know when you're there, because I sometimes go back into London. I'll take you for lunch or something. Oh my gosh, there's so many good places. There's like this really like small like cafe that's like does Thai food in like Waterloo. It's super cheap, but super tasty, called Marie's Thai Cafe. And
Okay.
it's like a greasy spoon cafe in the day, and then at night they serve Thai food, and it's like cash only. The mango sticky rice slaps. Um, oh my gosh, food
So
in
I'm staying in
like,
Camden, and then my partner and I are staying in Shoreditch.
okay, well, if you like Vietnamese food in Shoreditch on like
Love.
Kingsland Road, like there's loads of, I think it's called Viet food, but there's Bun Bun Bun. There's loads of like amazing Vietnamese restaurants, and I love Vietnamese, so
Love Vietnamese as
that's
well.
always a good place to go. There's a really good Spanish place in like Bethnal Green near Columbia Road Flower Market. So if you go to the Flower Market on a Sunday, which is like a
Yeah.
really cute thing to stroll and do, then there's a really good tapas. I mean, London just has such good food. That's one thing that I miss about
Yeah.
not living in the convenience of it all, is that like
Yeah.
the Deliveroo options. Not like I want
I discovered
to
Deliveroo with
promote them.
I was staying with my friend who goes to UCL, and we
Yeah,
got Dishoom on Deliveroo,
yeah,
and I
yeah,
was
yeah.
like pigging out. It was amazing.
It's so good. In New York is kind of amazing, so you know.
Yeah, that's true.
There's like much better like Mexican food in the US than there is in obviously in the
The
UK.
proximity and all.
Yeah, yeah. Like, yeah,
Yeah.
that's the one thing I'm like, you guys.
Different forms of immigration and colonization affecting
Yeah,
the level of food that like you
yeah.
guys have really good Indian food. We have really good Mexican food.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah,
Wonder
exactly.
why
I'm
that
like,
is. Okay, favorite sapphic movie and or TV show. I'd also love your thoughts on the Queer Ultimatum if you've watched it.
oh my gosh. Okay, yes, fine. Okay, let's do favorite what are some lesbian shows? Like what I mean like the L Word and then the L
Yeah,
Word Generation Q. I'm actually very late to that whole party. My partner's like,
I haven't seen the newest one yet.
I've seen. I'm not like up to date like that at all. And
Yeah.
what other like I don't know what other queer.
Or movies.
Sorry, I have one. It takes me a minute, my like to think about stuff. I would say my favorite, like love, so good was the Master of None series that was like not really like Master of None at all. Moments in Love that was with Naomi Aki and Lena Waithe, and it's like the 5-part very slow series that like literally
Yeah.
moved me so much. I was like, I return to that series time and time again. It feels like home. It feels like it's messy and it's complicated, and the way that they shoot it in the house and how it changes and the relationship changes, and like the questions around like fertility and infidelity, and the nurse, the Caribbean nurse, and the relationship they have, and her mum coaching her down the phone when she's giving her stuff. I was just like, whoa, I've never seen, I haven't gone through the process of having children or anything, but it's like that's the first time that I've ever seen anyone who like vaguely looks like me, vaguely has a similar experience or background navigating that thing that is very complicated of how do you have a child, how do you make a relationship, how do you commute, all of that stuff. And so that I just think wow, but especially Naomi Aki is a sensation, and I'm just like truly blown away.
I
Yeah,
love that season
yeah.
so much.
And
Um,
then oh my god, I mean listen, it was I feel like they did have some good conversations, but like obviously it was also super hectic. I just
mhm.
was like, Sam, like I know Ozzy's had some pain, but honestly I was like, why have you said yeah, like because
Get the fuck out of there. And
oh get out.
they still are not married, and she still has not met Aussie's family.
Well,
And they like did the engagement like a year ago.
yeah, the thing with the family, I can understand it's hard culturally, things are complicated, but it's like you can't, that to me is I'm just watching this person consistently run out the room whenever anything gets hard. And I get
Yeah.
it, you can see like how much their unresolved like childhood stuff is
It's
showing up,
giving
but I don't think,
Elsie.
but it's not for yeah, but it's not for Sam to fix that for
Yeah.
them. It's like Ozzy needs to go and therapy and do the work, and then because Sam having to wait until Ozzy is perfectly meditated to have a conversation, I was like, no. It was a bit scary. Anyway, I mean, there was so much going on there. It was like Yoli should have picked Xander, right? Because that's who they were in love with, clearly. Like,
Yeah. Messy. And then Lexi
messy.
Ray is
Yeah,
just,
I mean, that
yeah.
obviously wasn't gonna work. They're very, I mean, I feel like a lot of people have really, really been anti Lexi. I feel like she's young and thinks that she has like everything figured out, rather than,
Yeah.
I don't think
She's
it
like,
comes from a bad
she's
place.
younger than me, and I think I'm baby.
So I'm 29 and I feel like I'm a
Yeah,
baby,
I'm
but like I
25.
think
I'm
she
like,
just,
I am a child.
yeah, but and she's also Capricorn like me, so I also at 23 thought like I'm gonna do all the things like by the time I'm 25, and then obviously like life happens and you don't. But then, and then like Ray being quite passive or not in touch with her feelings, that's like, basically it's like everyone has to do some work before they show up in a relationship, otherwise it doesn't work.
It's
um
true.
but it was a lot. I'm like, who else? Oh gosh, Tiff and the dog, that really, I was so stressed. I was like, I had to look away. I was like, this is actually awful. But then they had their thing was very, but that I was
Yeah,
like,
that was
yeah.
handled so poorly.
I was scared and Sam's just like, I don't feel safe, but also I'm like not gonna flip out because that's not me. Sam, like, I just so calm.
Okay, last question of
Anyway.
mine. Favorite sapphic celebrity or like person to follow on social media?
Favorite sapphic celeb. I was like, they probably wouldn't fit that category. I take so long to think about everything. You're like, it's a quick fire, and I'm like,
It's okay.
I want to be really deliberate. Celebrity. I mean, who's even? I don't even know. Do I even know celebrities?
Or person to follow on social.
Oh,
Like,
on
so,
social.
yeah.
I mean, yeah, I mean, just someone that I love following on social, like who is queer and who is building a queer family. I love, and who I know and who I think is amazing is Erica Hart. And like they just had a,
Yeah.
yeah, with
Yeah.
their partner. I did like an event with them a few years ago when they came to London, which was amazing. And it's
Oh,
so beautiful to see
amazing.
them grow their family. And like,
Yeah.
I just love everything that they stand for and how they love each other. Gorge. And they're real and say it like it is, which is also gorge. So I'd
Yeah.
say, yeah, that them as someone fab to follow. I also did an event in New York with again someone that I do know but who I think is fab, like a curator called Kimberly Drew. She's
Mm.
amazing, and she did my event in New York, and she just asked the best, most thoughtful, delicious kind of questions, and it was
Oh,
such
I
a
love
joy.
that.
So yeah, and her Instagram is Museum Mammy.
Oh,
So yeah,
great handle.
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
so
So
funny
yeah,
that you
those are good ones, and they're both, in your part of town.
yeah, it's funny that you said Erica because that's the person that I recommend everyone follow on Instagram. Like, oh, you're making an Instagram, follow Erica Hart. I've been following them for years.
Yeah, yeah, they're
Yeah,
great.
love that. Well, we are out of time. Thank you so much, Liv,
Thank
for
you.
joining us and just for your really generous answers and ramblings. I could listen to you for hours, truly.
Thanks, because it was uncontrolled, but that's fine.
No, we love it.
Yeah. Thank
But
you so much for the support with the book, and to all of you for like getting the book, reading the book, and for joining. Like, it means a lot. And like,
yeah,
this is how things enter the world. It's through genuine recommendation and word of mouth and stuff. So yeah, it was a pleasure. And thank you for the thoughtful questions as well. It was great.
thank you.
Yeah.
Have a beautiful rest of
Thank
your
you. And let me
day.
know when you're in London, and if you
Yeah,
are, we'll see if we can, yeah. I'll
yeah, I'll send you my
send you some
dates.
stuff. I'll let you know if there's like parties and things happening as well. But yeah. Ooh.
Awesome.
Thank
Thank
you
you.
all.
All right, bye everyone.